expected line. Spectrum trading norms have been approved. We've got Naveen Kulkarni joining in from PhillipCapital. Naveen, awaiting the clarity on the guidelines in terms of details, but now that trading of spectrum has been approved, how big a boost is this going to be, and which of the players do you think stand to benefit immediately?
So primarily if we look at the spectrum trading, it essentially helps consolidation. So we have telecom operators like Aircel who are sitting on a significant amount of liberalized spectrum on 3G and 4G bands, which they have not been able to utilize it fully. So they might be looking at selling some of those bands. Apart from that, Reliance Jio, so they are planning to launch operations. And they are looking at launching on 800 megahertz LTE play. So they would be looking at buying, I would say, 800 megahertz band. So spectrum trading norms will benefit some of the smaller players who are looking to exit the business, and a larger player like Reliance Jio, who is going to make a foray into the telecom business.
So, Naveen, let me go back on this. What you're saying is that Reliance Jio is looking to perhaps buy more of 800 megahertz. Who would the available sellers be? Is Aircel an entity which would have sufficient spectrum in the 800 megahertz band? Where do you expect the first round of sales to begin, or the first round of spectrum trades to begin, if I could call it that?
Yeah, the first round, see, Reliance Communication and Reliance Jio, they are already looking at a spectrum sharing arrangement for 10 circles. But for a pan-India presence, Reliance Jio will have to buy 800 megahertz from Reliance Communications to complete its pan-India 800 megahertz footprint. And as I was saying, Aircel has around 13 circles on 2100 megahertz band, which is 3G spectrum. They have 4G spectrum in 8 circles. So they could be looking at selling these bands to get their debt levels down and make their business probably a little more viable.
Sure, Naveen, if you could just stay on the line. My colleague Sapna is joining in. Let's try and understand what the specific details of today's ruling is, or rather today's cabinet decision is. Sapna, we know that the gold monetization scheme has gone through, as have spectrum trading norms. What are the details that you can share with us?
Well, as far as the gold monetization and the gold bond schemes are concerned, there has been enough consultation on this account. A lot of details are already in the public domain, but a very quick wrap. The GMS is more of a facility to try and monetize unutilized gold deposits and, gold which has not been used for trading in the country. And the gold bond scheme, in a way, instead of buying physical gold, you buy a bond and try and get a redemption done, or you try and get the conversion done once the tenure of the bond is over. So the objective may almost be the same, but the routes are very different. So the gold monetization scheme and the gold bond scheme both have got the cabinet clearance. The expectation here is that, of course, details are not yet out. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley is will just be briefing the press, very shortly on this account. Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad is also going to be there, talking about, the cabinet notes and spectrum trading norms that have been cleared. But as far as GMS and GBS are concerned, I mean, the plan here is the government may roll out these schemes by the year end. And GMS, of course, will also have certain tax offs, but the deposits will not be used by banks for the CRR and SLR holdings. And as far as GBS is concerned, there'll be a fixed interest rate, and the money that will be raised via the GBS, the government may also use it as part of the borrowing calendar for the current year.
All right, Sapna, thanks so much for that. We've also got Rima joining in as we're keeping our eye on those telecom stocks in detail. Rima, I've just got one more question for Naveen, and then please do pitch in. I was just wondering, Naveen, you've already told us about the sort of, perhaps deals that could take place between a Reliance Communication and a Reliance Jio, and the fact that Aircel is sitting on so much of spectrum that it's not utilizing in 2100 megahertz. What about Bharti Airtel? Do you see it getting active in terms of any trading in the next couple of months at all?
For Bharti Airtel, one of the problems is they might hit the ceiling in their respective bands. So in 900 megahertz, they hold quite a bit across the key circles. So they could be buying something, but they may not be major buyers, because they will hit the 50% of the band ceiling or the 25% of the total spectrum for that circle. So the spectrum ceiling limits will need to be closely observed for the buyouts to happen.
Okay. Hi Naveen, Rima here. Can you compare buying or selling spectrum via the spectrum trading route as compared to, say, mergers and acquisitions? Which one is beneficial? And if spectrum trading is a far superior option, do you even expect M&A to happen?
See, these two are completely different plays. So from an M&A perspective, the problem is with the company's balance sheet. Companies which are weak have got quite stretched balance sheet, and against that, they do not have significant assets. The assets are also depreciated quite a bit because most of the operators launched their 2G services in 2008 and 9 kind of a time frame. So from that perspective to now, their assets have been depreciated. So against the kind of debt that some of the companies hold, so there is not enough there. So from that perspective, probably what is of value for most companies is the spectrum that operators hold. So spectrum trading from a buyer's perspective is more useful than buying out a complete company.
Yes, precisely. When you have an option to just buy the spectrum without the debt via the spectrum trading route, why would you go ahead and acquire the entire asset, including the leveraged balance sheet under the M&A route? But apart from that, what could be the nature of the payment structure, the payment scheme under spectrum trading, and would that be a limiting factor?
As far as my understanding goes, the payment structure, I think the spectrum has to be liberalized. Right, they should have paid the market rate for the spectrum. Non-liberalized spectrum will have to be liberalized by paying the pro rata market rate, and then the trading can happen. And I think the government will charge a 1% transaction fee. So from that perspective, the norm should be fairly clear.
Okay. So Naveen, according to you, Idea as well as Bharti could be buyers under the spectrum option route, while Reliance Communication would be a seller.
Reliance Communication seems likely to be a seller. Reliance Communication, Aircel, even Tata Teleservices, they could be the sellers.
Okay, Naveen, stay on with us. We also have another voice joining into the conversation, Mr. S.C. Khanna, former Secretary General of AUSPI, AUSPI, on the phone line. Mr. Khanna, thanks for being with us. Your first thoughts, we are awaiting specifics on this, but we know that spectrum trading has been allowed by the cabinet today.
Yeah, it's a good move done by the government. The industry was asking for it for quite some time because it will give benefit to those players who would like to sell the spectrum and all those players who would like to buy, who can expand more. Because on one side you have a problem of call drop. Now, call drop can only be checked by two things, by having more towers or by giving more spectrum. So all those players who will have, who are there, once they have the spectrum trading is allowed, they will have benefit, and it will. But make sure that the spectrum trading should be extended to that limit so that the competition model of Indian telecom stays. Because the competition model only keeps the tariffs down. At the moment, what government is doing is that they are not too much in favor of the industry. Whereas the earlier government, especially with the Vajpayee's time, we had a lot of benefits given to the industry, and that is why the model of telecom came up, and the reforms, that is how the common man could get telephone.
Mr. Khanna, that's a discussion perhaps for another day, but you were talking about the operators demanding. What they also wanted was that the amount which is received from the spectrum should be excluded from the calculation of AGR or adjusted gross revenue, on which every operator, pays their annual fees, like a license fee as well as your spectrum usage charge. So while we do not know in the final, what's been approved finally, but if it has been included, would that be a big limiting factor?
No, you see, I'll tell you one very important. There should not be any charge on trading, because once the buyer chooses this spectrum, his revenue will go up, right? And you will make you will get more revenue share in the total revenue kitty from the government will get. But if you start charging them for trading of the spectrum also, and then again charge on the revenue, which is not the correct thing to do.
Yeah. Sir, but that's a debate that will go on. I think the government's point of view is very clear that the seller of the spectrum, the entity that is selling it, is obviously, gaining a certain commercial consideration, which is why they were looking to at least contribute or account for that under the AGR, as Rima was saying. But if I could just get Naveen into the conversation back. Naveen, your thoughts on the fact that, we also had sharing guidelines that were announced, and now trading guidelines, which should be out shortly. Which of these do you think will be taken up more instantaneously by the industry? Do you see instant trading picking up, or do you think there's more scope of sharing right now under the given environment?
See, trading and sharing are two different sets of guidelines in the sense that in sharing you need to have the spectrum in the same band.
Correct.
So if one doesn't have the spectrum in the same band, then he will have to resort to trading of spectrum because he needs. So in cases where, let's say, a Reliance Communication and a Reliance Jio were to put up their spectrum, pool in their spectrum together, and they breach the spectrum caps for that circle, then they will have to go for a spectrum sharing kind of an arrangement rather than a trading kind of an arrangement. So these are the factors that operators will have to consider. So there is no clear-cut answer that what should pick up, but my sense is that a combination of both will happen in the medium term. But I would say that from a consolidation perspective, trading should be more widespread.
So, Naveen, I just want to extend Rima's question here on the fact that a lot of these companies were hoping that the revenue that's going to be generated out of trading will not be part of the AGR. And we're seeing Reliance Communication, for instance, up 14 to 15%. As you've told us, they will probably be looking at selling some part of their spectrum. What happens if the trading gains are part of the AGR? Then what kind of a hit are we talking about? Does it take away a substantial portion of the benefit that you will get by trading some of your spectrum or selling some of your spectrum?
The thing is that this is going to be a negotiated deal between two parties, right? So from that perspective, they will have to structure the deal according to whatever norms are announced by the government. So it does make trading a little more expensive, but if operators have to buy, then they will, if the requirement is that significant, they will have to pay the required amount of dues which are announced by the government.
Okay. Naveen, one final question. How will this show up in a company's, say, P&L? We can understand that if you've gone ahead and acquired, if you've traded and bought some spectrum, then it will help you get higher revenues. But considering that the efficiency maybe would go up, do you think it will affect the margins in any way? Tell us which line items will be affected if someone engages in spectrum trading.
So let's say that if an operator buys spectrum through trading route, then it's like any other intangible asset that the operator buys. Okay, so it increases the depreciation cost, but on the other hand, what does happen is that if an operator has higher amount of spectrum, then the network operating expense over a longer period reduces. It does not reduce immediately, but over a medium to long term, the capex and the network operating expenses will reduce because operators have more amount of spectrum to accommodate the minutes and data, so on and so forth.
Okay, so revenues go up, network expenses as well as capex is likely to come down for operators.
Well, I guess lots of developments and exciting developments in the telecom space, Rima. Thank you, Naveen, so much for joining in, and thank Mr. Khanna on that note as well. Well, all those telecom stocks are up and about, as you're seeing.